Hello, I'm Kyung-Ah Seo, a sister from Hanmaum Church in Chuncheon. The reason I emphasize that I'm a sister is because I used to want to be a man. I also strongly supported homosexuality. I want to share my testimony with you about how it's totally changed after meeting the risen Jesus. I used to go to church when I was young. As a kid, I tried hard to live according to the Bible. But due to my family's financial hardship, I came to resent my parents, and I was dissatisfied with the world. And I hated the fact that women were discriminated against and had many limitations in the male-oriented society. I went through physical changes earlier than my peers. It was uncomfortable to have female features, and I wished that I could be born again as a man. Furthermore, I experienced sexual harassment and often encountered perverts on crowded buses. I hated the fact that I was born a woman. I am very shy and easily embarrassed, so it was hard for me to stand in front of people. I hated my personality. I think this made me want to be a man even more, because men are taught to be progressive and confident and to face challenges. Growing up, I'd been just a normal girl who liked dolls and playing house. But from a certain point on, the way the girls played was no longer fun, and I became more interested in martial arts and war games. I didn't like obedient and weak personalities. I wanted to be confident, capable, and respected, even if I was a woman. Most girls in school usually removed the shoulder pads from their school uniforms, but I added extra shoulder pads to look tougher. The way I talked and acted became more and more manly. In 10th grade, I made a purposeful decision to enter the cross-dresser contest at my school. For the contest, I put on a leather jacket and shades and held up a gun to look like the Terminator. There were times when girls even approached me with feelings that were more than just friendship. However, I liked men. If I could choose my gender, I wanted to be a man. My role models were men as well. And if I had kids, I wanted sons. There's a myth that you'll have a son when you take the last piece of food on a plate. So I always fought to grab the last piece. Ever since I was young, I liked watching animation and movies. It's because I thought I could get a variety of knowledge, ideas and historical facts without personally experiencing them. So the media greatly influenced my thoughts and values. Particularly, I got excited and intrigued when I watched movies that dealt with male homosexuality. Since I liked the male gender, I really liked those movies where the main characters are charismatic and attractive men. These men were not the effeminate gay characters that we imagine homosexuals to be. At first, the idea of homosexuality felt strange and uncomfortable. But this so-called forbidden fruit, or pleasure from deviation, attracted me. It started as a very small curiosity, but before I realized it, I was falling much deeper into it. Because I had been watching many movies that beautified homosexuality, I began to think that it was just one of many ways to express love. And because it was something that the world forbade, it seemed all the more tragically romantic. Homosexuality includes the physical act, the relationship as well. But I wanted to cover that up by using the term platonic love. I began to think that love was just a union of two souls. I thought that if you found someone who was compatible with you in heart and mind, you could fall in love with that person regardless of gender. Regardless of whether the relationship was heterosexual, homosexual, or bisexual, I wanted to see it as just a love between two individuals. Looking back, although it could have stopped at the level of friendship or respect, I thought that where the heart went, the body also had to go. Although I thought this way, I did my best to live a Christian life until the 12th grade. On the outside, I was good, but I could no longer oppress the questions and dissatisfaction inside me. As I gained more worldly knowledge, it conflicted with Christian values. Eventually, I began to think that religion discriminates against people, and that it was made up by people with outdated minds. After going through such a rebellious time, I completely left the church when I went to college. Furthermore, I majored in philosophy, which taught me to doubt constantly. I was no longer sure about God's existence, and it was so intriguing to hear about claims that denied Christianity. So I turned my back on God and lived like the prodigal son. When I went to college, I was able to fully express the desires that were oppressed all my life. I wanted to show that women could do all the things that men could do. So I participated in all the school events and drank to a degree I could barely handle. I thought it was a discrimination to try to protect women, so I argued that all women should serve in the military as well. I even applied to military academy. I was very interested in feminism and social reforms, and I thought that these could change the world. Because of all this, no one saw me as a woman. People treated me like a man and called me a long-haired rocker. However, such reactions from people didn't bother me. Rather, I felt like I was being accepted as one human being. Since I really wanted to be a man and had fantasies about homosexuality, there was a point when I wanted to have a transgender operation so that I could love a man as a man. Although I didn't act upon my fantasy, I was pretty much a gay man in my mind. If I changed my gender and loved another woman, that would be considered a heterosexual relationship. But I wanted to be a gay man. I thought that made me a true homosexual. Although I didn't have a transgender operation, I still advocated homosexuality. There was a TV show in 2010 about a gay male couple. I watched the show many times, including the reruns. The family members who were against such a relationship were portrayed as ignorant people. But the family members who were supportive were portrayed as logical and righteous. Back then I taught my 6-year-old daughter that she could choose to marry either a man or a woman. I proudly believed that I was very enlightened and progressive. However, later, when I believed in Jesus, I told her that I was wrong. Living a life apart from God, I thought that I would be free and happy if I lived according to my belief. However, looking back at my past 10 years, my life was hell. The worldly knowledge which I idolized made me conclude that there is no right answer. I couldn't find happiness in my family and got disappointed in relationships, and my hope in changing the world through social movements faded. Eventually I hated everything and I just stayed at home and watched TV all the time. I had so many worries and struggled with depression and insomnia. Eventually, I began having thoughts of suicide. At the lowest point of my life, the mother of my eldest child's friend encouraged me to come to her church. So I tagged along without a thought. At first, I was very weary, but after the worship service and fellowship, I realized things were different here. The church members had this full assurance in the word and seemed to know something I didn't. So I became very curious. All this time, I had many questions about Christianity. First, I wanted to verify whether God exists or not. However, these people were saying that there was proof of God's existence. They said God had given us proof so that everyone could believe. However, the resurrection sounded so insignificant to me. I was expecting some kind of a sudden enlightenment or mysterious experience. They explained that when your faith is based on your experiences, it can be easily shaken. Regardless of your situation, you believe the resurrection based on the historical writings and testimonies of the disciples. I still had a lot of doubts and wondered, what if history was made up and the disciples were crooks? These kind of thoughts kept coming. Then one day, I had a dream where I was sinking into a swamp. The swamp was full of filthy things like sewage. But somehow, it didn't smell bad or look dirty to me. And then, I saw a rope in front of me. But I was thinking, can I trust this? What if the rope is rotten? There was nothing else around me, and I was about to die. But I was having these foolish doubts. That's when I thought that I might have a mental condition of constant doubting. Days later, the lady whom I had fellowship with at church said, "Whether you believe or not, it is a historical fact." At that moment, I felt like I was struck on the head. It was like I was refusing to believe the fact that 1 + 1 = 2. Whether I understood or not, fact was fact, and truth was truth. The basis of faith was not me. History was the basis of human civilization, and I couldn't deny it just because it was hard to believe. The acts of God were not things that human beings could understand with their limited minds. Just as the Israelites could survive when they looked up at the staff of Moses, we could believe by looking at the proof that only God can give. However, me being my own Lord did not seem like a terrible sin. But when I saw from God's perspective, I realized that He couldn't possibly let us suffer and die apart from Him because of this sin. He had loved us so much that He had made us in His own image. Therefore, He had to send His only Son, because this sin could not be solved by anything else. The Almighty, who could create or destroy the whole universe with His word, had died for the sin. Me, being my own Lord, the sin of judging things however I wanted, was such a terrible sin that God had to be killed for it. One day I was praying. I saw an image in my mind. I have 2 daughters, and a serial killer kidnapped one of them and brutally murdered her. When the criminal was caught, he was a psychopath. He felt no remorse. Could I let my other daughter be executed in place of this killer, whom I'd rather shred to pieces? How could I do something like that? I thought as I prayed and wept. Then, my 3-year-old daughter, who was next to me, started to cry. What I saw at that moment was her saying, "Mom, do I have to die? Mom, I'm so scared. But I'll go, Mom." Words could not express the heartbreaking pain of seeing your child face death in obedience. He saved us in such a way, but I'd refused to repent, saying things like, "Who told you to die for me? If you were going to do that, why did it even create us?" I was so rebellious, unmoved, and devil-like. But it was none other than the Creator who died for someone like me. Unlike what I used to think, love was more than just a special, intense feeling. I couldn't do anything else but to surrender to this true love, which can make someone give up his life, even for his enemies. If He gave us His life, He gave us everything. Someone like Him would not tell us to do something that is harmful to us. His commands and His law had all been His love for us. Amen. I began to see what homosexuality truly was. It was in reality just a game of emotions designed to satisfy your lust. God had created the universe in the perfect way, and if you were not living according to His design, you were already in a cursed state. What homosexuality inevitably did was to destroy the families that God gave us and to turn the holy temple used to create life into a tool of depravity. I realized what a terrible sin it was to call it normal, and I surrendered to God's love. Then I no longer had any regrets about giving up homosexuality. Amen. Later, I found the Bible verses about the devil putting thoughts into a person's heart. I realized that the devil leads people astray in the most convoluted way by using the media to plant strange and sensitive feelings about homosexuality into them. Of course, it was me who had chosen to hold on to those thoughts by being my own Lord. However, once I realized who was behind it, I stopped watching TV, animation and movies that I used to love. Although I did not physically act on homosexuality, it is said that having an adulterous thought itself is adultery. In fact, I was worse than the homosexuals. I boasted that I could convince normal people to support homosexuality. My heart was burdened at the thought of God dying for someone like me. Although Jesus forgave all my sin, I could not forgive myself. It was because I was oppressed by my so-called conscience. But I was making Jesus' sacrifice meaningless. Pretending to be good and conscientious was actually being prideful. It was my sin of not believing that Jesus fulfilled everything. What God really wanted was for me to realize that my sins were cleansed by the blood of the Almighty, that my old self had died, and that I could live freely and receive His love. When I understood God's true intention, I was set free from the guilt I had. Additionally, God gave us everything abundantly in addition to the eternal life we received through Jesus. In the past, I complained about everything, including my gender, situation, my looks, and my personality. I am so grateful to now understand that I am precious enough for Him to have bought me with His own blood.
Amen.
In a worldly sense, I don't have much. But because Jesus is my Lord, I believe His word, which says that I have everything.
Amen.
Once I realized what kind of love I received, my heartaches were gone. I stopped blaming others, and I could even love my enemies. All I had to do was to believe that I was a new creation through the resurrection.
Amen.
Although I was not the best mum, it would not have been possible to understand the Father's heart if I did not have the gift of children. It is scary to think that I could have had a transgender operation or have lived a homosexual life without my own children. In the past, I protested and asked why homosexuality was bad. I argued that it was love, and I rebelled against God. But when I received Jesus in my heart as my Lord, I came to know the truth. Homosexuality is not a destiny or personal taste. It is one terrible result of the sin of being my own Lord. If God hadn't rescued me, I still would be sinking in a swamp of homosexuality, which goes against God's order of creation, while thinking that I was superior and enlightened. Now I believe that only God is true and that He is true love.
Amen.
I no longer wish to be a man. However, I found a way to live my dream and live a best life. If I could live only one day, I will live the best life by living for the Lord and the gospel.
Amen.
Thank you.